use of paracetamol to tenderize meat, skin, or momo. Steel nails are also now being dropped to cook beans, plus high herb additives and preservatives, including the use of bleach and other detergents to hasten cassava fermentation and then bring up fufu delicacy. Better watch it, because public food consumption is sure taking a poisonous toll on our health.
Well, as Kingsley said, it's no longer news that ours is a nation of culinary experts. We relish the foodies from the chefs, high and low, the street food vendors, open and tucked away restaurants, parties, and of course, other ceremonies where large cooking of food for consumption is done.
Sure, Claire. I mean, we should have used the word instead of rest. We should have used buka, because that's now mama put, because that's now also in the dictionary. Now, the large-scale cooking from the groups you just mentioned is getting the attention, particularly in its handling and potential poisoning through some harmful cooking practice.
All right, so integral to healthy eating and living for people anywhere in the globe is in the path through which food handling, hygiene, and safety is considered.
So when this process to achieving nutrition is compromised in any manner, and indeed at any particular point, it brings on increased risk to health and, of course, body organs, and ultimately mortality on an unacceptable scale.
Indeed, and now it is common knowledge that most eateries, restaurants, mama puts, bukas, everywhere try to cut costs to meet up meal service. So, but when that cutting cost and whatever other reasons are used, affect our lives and health, ultimately, Kingsley, it becomes very, very worrisome.
That's right. I mean, this is a very touchy subject to discuss, because we can't run away at some point from eating out. I mean, it's not all the time that you get to take your own home food. But so when you do eat out, what are the issues that you confront, and what concerns should you have with regard to how the food was prepared in the first instance? So the way some of these meals get poisoned from patronizing some of the eateries by Nigerians should be one that would attract public attention. And in many quarters, food poisoning is usually, unfortunately, associated sometimes with evil spirit, malice, or curses from persons who are in the village, whereas the evidence is right before our very eyes.
So from the paracetamol meat tenderizing business, other harmful herbs and reacting agents, lethal preservations of fruits and chemicals our food are subjected to, what more unwholesome cooking habits are we likely to hear or see?
All right, more worrisome, Claire, is the fact that we obviously lack the surveillance means to track and even arrest such cases of foodborne diseases and poisoning.
So, just how can we stay healthy and safe when it becomes necessary to eat out?
Do the food vendors know the implications of what they do with regard to the meals that they prepare? And how should you, even at home, handle the foods that you prepare? Answers to these questions and more will be provided in our conversation segment today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being with us. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. And Kingsley, I just like to appreciate a lot of people. Just over the weekend, I was at one of our local markets here, Taco to be precise, and these two women saw me and said, "Oh, Good Morning Nigeria is the first thing I watch before we leave." So to all of you who make this your breakfast show before you leave your house, we say thank you and welcome to Friday's edition, another interesting edition of the program. It's broadcast live here on the network service of the NTA, and we're reaching you from the nation's capital, Abuja. We have our complimentary segments associated will come newspaper review, business, sports, entertainment. All will be coming your way in the next 2 hours or so. But first, Abdul Malik Adio is right in the newsroom, and so let's join him for the early morning news. Abdul Malik, over to you.
Good morning, Kingsley and Claire. It's an interesting topic this morning, and I'm sure those are mouth-watering pictures right there. Are you going to visit the Mama Put after the program? All right. Moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari is back in Abuja after a week-long official engagement in the United Kingdom. The president was received on arrival at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport by the Minister of FCT, Mohammed Musa Bello, his Chief of Staff, Haba Kiare, Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Ademu, the Director General, Department of State Service, and other senior government officials. While in London, President Muhammadu Buhari led the Nigerian delegation to the first UK-African Investment Summit, where new perspectives were discussed on partnership for prosperity and held bilateral meetings with some world leaders and critical international organizations. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Niyi Adebayo, described the visit as highly beneficial to Nigeria.
It seems to have taken the center stage. Our president met with the UK Prime Minister. It was a very, very interesting meeting. A lot of issues were discussed, and one cannot but be impressed with the seriousness with which the UK is taking Nigeria. His being here has shown that Nigeria is serious and open to business.
With more than 10 trillion naira already in the kitty of the pension fund, government is considering the use of these funds as long-term loans for infrastructural development. This is one of the issues deliberated at the first National Economic Council meeting in 2020 held in Abuja.
Infrastructure investment fund can be created using the existing PENCOM law and regulations, which allows up to 20% of the total pension fund to be used to invest in infrastructure and other long-term assets.
It is necessary for us to strengthen prevention at our port of entry. We are informed that Lassa fever is not a killer disease. It is treatable.
All of them have committed to prioritizing it in their budgets, prioritizing it in their policies, and this is exactly what we wanted to achieve.
The process of national development is a collective thing. Every item we discuss are very important, not only for our states, but the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, received governors of the Southwest. The governors are that of Ekiti, Ondo, Osun, and the Deputy Governor of Oyo State. The press was briefed shortly after the meeting held behind closed doors.
The legal framework to back this Amotekun and this legal framework is going to be one in which all of us will look at, and we'll be sure that it goes without any hindrance. Amotekun is there. Attorney General has spoken. I'm sure you all read the statement that it was misinterpreted. So it's so clear. So there was no time. At no time did the government wanted to stop Amotekun. That's what we must go about with. And all of us believe that they didn't want to stop Amotekun. And even when the Federal Attorney General hasn't spoken, it's all about us. So there's no problem.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has arraigned the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Bello Adoke, along with 6 others on 42-count charge bordering on money laundering.
We were able to arrive at a consensus that the 3 accused persons be remanded with the same EFCC that has been keeping, particularly the first accused person, for over 30 days now.
We will file fresh charges at the Federal High Court. Already another charge in respect of a different matter has already been filed for the Halliburton before this court. We have filed another charge at the Federal High Court for money laundering component against all the defendants here.
The electoral indifference as exhibited by Nigerians' voting population during election is creating concerns for the independent National Electoral Commission. National Commissioner and Chairman, Board of Electoral Institute, Solomon Chuebi, disclosed this at a focus group discussion on voter apathy towards continuous voter registration and elections in Nigeria.
As to actual utility of those cards, the participation in the electoral
Now it's time for business news, and let's join our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye, who is talking about the plans by the federal government to float Naira-denominated new foreign debt instrument.
The federal government is keeping true to its quest to float a new debt instrument known as the Jollof Bond, foreign but Naira-denominated, and is already holding meetings with investors to gauge the level of interest in international markets. 3 weeks after the takeoff of the 2020 budget, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, took the campaign to the United Kingdom, where the Made in UK Africa Investment Summit just held. But before then, she explained the concept of the Jollof Bond.
Essentially, these are bonds that are issued offshore but denominated in the local currency. And the importance of such a bond is that it protects the country, the issuer, from exchange rate exposure. We are contemplating such a bond. There have been proposals made to us, not just by the UK government, but also by Deutsche Bank and today also by the World Bank. So we're looking at that as another instrument to raise financing for the national budget.
She said the Jollof bonds will be used to fund infrastructure projects across the country. And next are the details of Thursday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria here on NTA Network Service. Coming up next will be newspaper review. Stay with us.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atrebi, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's kick off with you.
All right, we've got quite a number of papers here, all except for the one I have here, Leadership, lead with a similar story on the outcome of the meeting yesterday on the regional security outfit. Let me start with the caption from the Punch. And it leads Operation Amotekun. Governors meet Oshibajo to back exercise with law. And comes to rider there. Malami said he was misquoted on Amotekun's status. That's Akeredolu. And the second rider says Constitution does not recognize regional security outfit, says AGF. There are other stories trending on the front page of the Punch. The two picture stories there, if we can just take a little down, you find some travelers on arrival at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport during screening on Thursday. Of course, that may not be unconnected with the spread of the coronavirus across Asia and other parts of the world. And you can see, arrivals there being screened at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport. Just trending at the bottom of that picture stories, Dasuki appears in court, withdraws application, protesting trial. Details of that on page 2. And Boko Haram demanded 800 million ransom for Andimi. That story is attributed to Khan. Details of it on page 12. Now, Zamfara raises relief panel for banditry victims. Details on page 19. People's abandoned school as Lagos cult clashes claim 13. Pages 4 and 5. And 4 days after ACF condemns Adamawa Khan chair's execution. You can find the details of that on page 12. Okay, let me pause a while. Kingsley.
Well, the lead stories on the front pages of the Daily Trust as well as the Blueprint all focus on the Amotekun, which is the security outfit in the Southwest region. According to the Daily Trust, federal government Southwest governors strike deal on Amotekun. With 2 riders, outfit must align with community policing template, and Afenifere not convinced. For the Blueprint newspaper, says 24 hours after Tinubu's stance, federal government and Southwest governors reached truce to work out legal framework. And 4 riders to that. AGF, that's Attorney General of the Federation, denies tagging outfit illegal. And another rider, it's legal. That's according to Zekoman, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Odua Youth support governors, and Ohaneze wants Bakassi back. Details can be found on page 9. And other stories there on the front page, back to the Daily Trust newspaper. Below the nameplate, it says it's not possible for ex-governors to control successors. That's according to Shetima, immediate past governor of Borno State, now a senator. Some states yet to receive federal government support as Lassa fever spreads. And then below the photograph there, it says Kwankwanso wants to return to APC. That's according to Ganduje, governor of Kano. Why we accepted materials brought by Uzodinma, that's according to the Supreme Court. And details of that can be found on page 8. It says, federal government stops lecturer salaries over IPPIS. Details on page 54. I just wondered, just before we come in here, the story on why we accepted materials brought by Uzodinma according to the Supreme Court. Now, the story says the Supreme Court yesterday indicated that the INEC did not counter the result sheets produced by Hope Uzodinma of the APC in the March 2019 governorship elections in the state. The court said the main issue by Uzodinma and APC was that votes due to them in 388 polling units were excluded, which if added, they would have emerged winners. Said, having pleaded that the documents are false, the respondents made allegations of a criminal nature against the appellants. That's the respondents, in this case, Ihedioha, INEC, made allegations of a criminal nature against the appellants. They were required to plead the specific elements of fraud and lead evidence showing the genuine results. Not only must the allegations be proved beyond reasonable doubt, it must also be proved that the appellants personally committed or aided or abetted the commission of the crime, or that they procured the commission of the crime through their agents or officials.
So that is the position of the law regarding that judgment. Well, let's come to
that would be a contentious position, I must say, with the greatest respect to the lordships.
Every issue from the point of view of the law always has two sides, sometimes even more sides. Well, let's come to these truths that have eventually come from the issue of Southwest security proposals. This was sequel to the meeting at the instance of the governor of the Southwest to Mr. President. But because Mr. President was away in United Kingdom from the UK-Africa Summit, he asked the Vice President to meet with them. And the spokesperson for the Vice President says that the meeting agreed that the structure of Amotekun should align with the community policing strategy of the federal government. At the meeting where the 3 governors of the Southwest and 3 other deputy governors who joined their colleagues, the Attorney General of the Federation and the Inspector General of Police. In this regard, by virtue of the agreement and the truce reached, legal instrument will be put in place by each of the states to give legal backing to the initiative. And also the issues concerning the regulation of the security structure will be spelled out as far as the issues is concerned. The governor of Ondo, Ekiti, and Osun were there, and they were joined by the deputies of Lagos, Oyo, and Ogun states. The chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum, which is governor of Ondo State, said, we have rubbed minds and all of us have agreed on the way forward. So, joy is better than war. In most instances, when we have controversies, we tend to speak at each other, not even bothering to listen to each other's point of view. But whenever we are able to come around the turntable, we will be able to understand one another, and we can always resolve our problems by talking. Unfortunately, this instance, within the past 2 weeks when this thing happened, since January 9th, you have had people of opposing political views, those who have cases in court, taking alliances, and those who are on the divide of the header farmers clashes, also including Meyeti Allah Cult of Ture, making inflammatory statements which were all hitting up the polity, happening on the divide, religious and ethnic, which is undermining our unity and even, in fact, the security they are all fighting for.
That was a happy ending, resolution, of the issue. Again, like Bayo, you said, it goes to show that, dialogue is still the best option to, resolving any controversy. So that's a good one there, coming from that. Another story that you may also wish to talk about, Bayo, is the one on the front page. I think I have it on the front page of Leadership. It's just an earpiece. It's talking about the release yesterday by Transparency International on the Corruption Index report. The Leadership says government rejects TI Corruption Index report. And, of course, the details of that on page 8. I don't know if any other paper has a story on that. Kingsley, do you have it?
Well, it's not on the front page of the blueprint, neither is it on the front page of the Daily Trust, which I read earlier.
In fact, the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission was also on record to have said that Transparency International report certainly is not reflecting the development in the fight against corruption. If you recall, in the past 3 weeks or so, the acting chairman had listed the successes that they have achieved, the number of arrests, the number of convictions they have read, but he is saying that apparently this did not reflect in the template presented yesterday by Transparency International. The curious thing about this report is that it is also presented by somebody who heads an NGO in the country and who, before now, has taken the position that is usually very opposing to the stand of government in several other controversial issues. And when you do such, particularly in doing an evaluation, it becomes questionable. And he was given an explanation that they use templates from the World Bank, from the IMF, and other research for which data and the background was not given. In social research, when you do research and make deductions from it, you put into public domain the areas of your research, the population, and how you came about it. The essence is to put it in the public domain to show that it is scientific and it is verifiable. Anybody can follow through and get all those things. But apparently, the contention of government is that the few successes they have achieved, including the conviction of a senator and some former governors, and other cases about corruption is not reflected.
Yes, I just want to just to corroborate what you've just said. On the inside page still of the Leadership, it says, moreover, I'm just quoting a portion, it is quite ironic that the report by TI posits that the index does not show real incidents of corruption, yet it claims that the report is a reliable indication of the perception of the Nigerian public and the international community about the state of corruption in the country. Suffice to state that in 2019, the year under review by TI was particularly a remarkable one for the EFCC, and it goes on to show, of course, the number of convictions, over 1,000 convictions, including that of a former state governor and a 7th senator, like you rightly said. Okay. And of course the tune of 7.65 billion naira, that was recovered. So, there's also another story, just before we take the editorial, I don't know, power sector has collapsed, says National Economic Council. There are quite 2 riders to that effect.
Yes, there's concern. I mean, only last week we had instances of about the national grid collapsing on 2 occasions. And it is becoming a security threat in the sense that if all our power feed is coming from a centralized grid, then that itself is a threat to security. And there has been raised the concern that there is a need to have a duplicity of grid systems so that we don't always rely on one grid. But the National Economic Council is lamenting that in spite of about 3 trillion investment into the power sector for GENCOs and DISCOs, apparently we are not getting value for money.
That's right. We'll have to take on that headlong. Just before the editorial comes from the Blueprint, there's this story about some states yet to receive federal government support as Lassa fever spreads. The question always arises, what kind of support are you expecting in the meantime from the federal government? What is it that you have done on your own, either as preventive measures or otherwise? We know the cause of the vector of the Lassa fever, the virus that rats all over the place. How much sanitation have you seen at the state level to take care of the vermin that normally will carry this virus? Every time it's federal government hasn't done this, federal government hasn't done this. I mean, sometimes these things are so worrisome, Bayo.
No, I think it is just buck passing, because the only instance where you say you wait for a federal government intervention is where there is an outbreak of a disease. That disease is not certain. We are not sure. Then you have the national agency coming in to do research to find out and locate that specific virus that is causing the epidemic. But Lassa fever has been, in fact, Lassa fever was discovered in Nigeria. That is why it's called Lassa fever. It's a fever that was discovered in Borno State, a village called Lassa, where it first affected a nurse, and unfortunately that nurse died. And if it is a yearly occurrence, and we know that during the dry season, this is where its incidences go on the increase. Why will state governments not put measures and then say we are waiting for the federal government?
Precisely.
It is only when it becomes
an environmental issue.
Yes.
I mean, yesterday when we were discussing some of that topic on Good Morning Nigeria, I mean, the point came out, why have we seen deratting measures just to get rid of rats, particularly in urban areas? We haven't seen that. I mean, you go around many neighborhoods and you find that even the waste bins, those waste bins are broken, so the refuse is exposed. Where are the sanitary inspectors going around ensuring that you have the proper disposal of waste? When you go to marketplace, these are basic things that local governments and states can do. When the matter gets, I mean, we had this unfortunate incident of the 2 medical doctors passing away in Kano. Yes, you can then say, okay, fine, if you need a containment and it's getting beyond the capacity of the state government, then you call on the federal government. But every time everybody says, go to the federal government, go to the federal government.
Don't forget the rat meat, Kingsley. It's also a delicacy for some.
No, it's not every kind of rat now. What people call the bush rat, that is the or rabbit. In Nigerian parlance, it's called rabbit. That is the one that is a delicacy for those who eat it. But I don't think that it is that rabbit or the bush rat that is the vector of the Lassa fever. It's
the edible one is the rat.
Yes.
The dangerous one is the mice.
Yes.
Is it mice or mouse?
Mouse is singular. Yes.
It's the mice.
But we call it rat.
Here, everywhere we call everything rat.
Yes. No, it's not.
Is it the one you call Asin?
No, Asin is the long-mouthed. I've forgotten the English name for it now. It's the long-mouthed rat. That is the one that is called Asin. But this one is just the multi-mammalian rat.
That's right.
That is very dangerous. That is the one that is the vector. So far, there are instances of Lassa fever in 10 states.
Yeah, I was reading Ogun was denying that it was on the list. So maybe if Ogun is on your list, probably we'll have to place a question mark on that.
-1.
All right, now Blueprint newspaper has our editorial for review this morning. It's at page 12. Auditor General's quest for enabling laws. Bayo.
Yes, Auditor General is calling for enabling law to ensure that everybody complies, because by law, all public enterprises, public institutions, parastatals are expected to have their accounts audited by a specific date, mostly by September of every year, and copies of that external auditor's report is supposed to be submitted at 3 levels. One of the levels is to the office of the Auditor General, and most often than not, the report from the Auditor General has to go through the National Assembly for enforcement, and some of these things are not done effectually, and the Auditor General's office feels that if this law is in place, it will become a regular thing required by that law for all this compliance, and it will also go a long way in helping fighting part of the war we are all concerned about war against corruption and pilfering at the public coffers. So essentially, I think the attention of the National Assembly should be drawn to this to ensure that at least the work of the Auditor General of the Federation is backed by the required law to make their work very effective.
Bayo Toyobe, we'd like to thank you for being with us all through the week. We hope you enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Before we get ahead with our conversation on our harmful cooking habits, let's listen to this background now by Abdul Salam Jibril.
Recently, reports have it that many Nigerians are unknowingly consuming food that are being prepared with harmful substances such as paracetamol, cobalt, steel nails, bleach, amongst others, by eateries, restaurants, and even some households, in the bid to make cooking faster and tender and with the aim of saving costs. Subsequently, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, along with other health watchers, have brought this unhealthy practice to public consciousness, and many Nigerians have been expressing shock and disappointment while condemning the practice.
But this is out of this world. I don't even know where these people get this idea from, which is harmful to the citizens itself. And most of the people that eat by the roadside or outside are not aware of this danger to their health, which is very, very serious and deeply concerning and worrying to the rest of us.
Like people that you buy this meat that they used to call rising parts, and you don't used to done quick. It will take more than 30 minutes for the apple paradol. It's not good for the health of some people that don't. There's some people that don't need it in their system.
It's my first time of hearing that, but then I don't think it's encouraging, because we do some funny things simply because we think it's right. But you know, sometimes you have to just go beyond the surface aspect of it, because you just want to meet a need at a time. You think it will help you, but I think it's wrong.
That's dangerous, very dangerous, and I think people that eat outside should take caution. Also, you know, you need to verify where you are eating. You know, even some of the restaurants that are around, not even the Buka stuff, you need to also verify, you know, what they cook, how the preparation methods, and all those things. So, and I think it's even preferable that you cook in your own house. It's safer, it's cheaper. You know, you can.
These concerns, as raised by health experts, warn that the practice could lead to devastating health challenges as well as the loss of lives. They maintain that adding these substances while cooking becomes highly toxic and can lead to liver damage and adversely affect other vital organs in the body. Now, how do we discourage this ugly cooking practice? What mechanisms are in place to curb such excesses of these individuals trying to cut costs at the detriment of innocent food-loving Nigerians? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers to these and more shortly.
All right, thank you very much there, Abdul Salam, for that background. We have guests with us here in the Abuja studios as well as at our Benin Network Center. So joining us from Benin is Professor Ernest Izebigie. Professor Ernest Izebigie is a professor of growth biology and biochemistry and the former vice chancellor of Benson Idahosa University, also in Benin. Prof, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, Nigeria.
Also here in the Abuja studios is Professor Martins Emeje. Is a pharmacist and currently at the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. Prof, pleasure to have you around.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, Claire.
Okay, yeah, Kingsley, thank you. We have also here in Abuja, public health consultant, Dr. Isaac Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us as well.
Good morning.
And the only lady here with us,
but you're a lady as well.
the only lady guest here with us, the only dietitian here with us, Mrs. Sarah Abagai, registered dietitian and CEO, Century Nutrition Services Limited. She's also a fellow Institute for Dietetics. In Nigeria. I would like to welcome you once again to Good Morning Nigeria. Today, once again, we're looking at the harmful cooking habits. Are we all guilty or are we complicit?
Well, I think both. You know, sometimes because of ignorance, people do things. And others do deliberately. You know, because, well, let me just do and get away with this, you know, and before you know it, it becomes habit. So food issues are very delicate in the sense that whatever you put in your mouth determines whether you will live or fall ill and die. And, you know, it does not start only from the table. It starts from preparation. In fact, purchasing, storage, preparation, cooking, up to the point it gets to the table. So a lot happens that could endanger the lives of consumers. Additives, methods of cooking, and several other things involved. And we are all guilty and complicit too.
I don't know if I could take it away from you, but since you are a woman, and you know they say that the woman's place, although of course that is changing now, you know, we have the key to the kitchen. Can you give us in numerical terms, if you may, some of those practices that are termed harmful cooking practices?
Well, yes. I think some come from our background, from tradition. You know, you find some women who will cook because of the way they were brought up, what they were taught, the values they grew up with. I know a certain area in this country where, for example, if you're going to cook fish, you start from morning. And when you have loaded the fish, layer vegetables, fish, layer in an earthen pot. You cover that pot and you put fire and you keep, you know, cooking gently, gentle heat throughout the day until evening. And the idea is that when you eat that fish, you know, the bones crumble along with the fish, the flesh, and you are able to eat, not minding the loss of nutrients from the vegetables. Because by the time that is brought out, it's just like gravy. You can no longer see vegetables. You understand? And so for a person like that, coming face to face with a person who places fish on the fire and cooks it for 1 hour as pepper soup and brings it out, they've always said, the fish is not yet dead and you are eating it with the blood. That is the values that this person is coming, you know, with from wherever she was brought up. And you find also that modernity is bringing a lot of, you know, terrible things with regards to our culinary, you know, ideas or whatever. You find that people are actually trying to cut time short because they are in a hurry, they have too much work to do, especially, excuse me, with the changing role of women now. Women go to work, they come back, they have the pressure cooker, they have the what do you call it? The pressure cooker, the microwave oven, and the rest of them. And all that is to talk about labor saving, because that's what they call it, labor saving devices. But these are the things that are, you know, destroying our food and, you know, generating serious chemicals, hydrocarbons, and, you know, all manner of things that go to tamper and damage our DNA, resulting in issues of cancers and several other things.
All right, Mrs. Abagai, thank you very much there for your opening comments. Let's bring in now Professor Martin Semeje, who is a pharmacist. And indeed, we'll let our viewers know, part of the prompt for today's topic has to do with a widely reported incident that people are now using paracetamol as a meat tenderizer. paracetamol, I mean, the pharmacists, tell us, we also hear that they also use nails if you want to tenderize a cow leg. I've never heard that before, but in the course of preparing for this topic, some of our colleagues were indicating that you put nail. People now also eat nail virtually, as it were. But from the point of view of paracetamol in the first instance, let us know the implication as a pharmacist.
Okay, thank you. Let me take it from the basics. I mean, paracetamol is a drug, and as you may know already, it's synonymous with pharmacy when you talk about drugs. And is the benzene, there's something we call benzene. And I know a lot of people know about benzene, almost have read about benzene. And one of the things that most people know about benzene is that it is carcinogenic. By the way, when you drive into...
That is to say it causes cancer.
Yes. By the way, when you drive into the petrol station, that aroma that you smell, that sweet smell that you get in petrol station is due to benzene. Now, I've laid that... Is
that a sweet smell?
Yes, it's a sweet smell. It's a sweet smell. In fact, if we have time, we'll get to that. You see, when you talk about drug abuse and misuse, it's not just about taking codeine or tramadol. A lot of youths also go to the petrol station just to sniff the petrol station because it has its own way of hiding the guys. Now, that benzene, even though it is poisonous, even though it is carcinogen, even though it causes cancer, the pharmacist is able to convert it into a useful product. And one of such useful products is paracetamol. Yes. So the origin of paracetamol itself is that poisonous agent called benzene. But by the time we give you paracetamol, you now have something that can save your life. Okay?
If it is not abused.
That's why I'm laying this foundation.
Fantastic.
So that when you decide to convert our drug back to where we took it from, you now know what you are drinking. You are no longer drinking our paracetamol. You are drinking benzene.
How do you do that?
Let me just say it in raw form so that we understand the danger of what we are doing. That we made benzene a poisonous chemical to become a useful chemical called drug, called paracetamol. Then you decided to go and start doing pharmacy, because altering what we gave you to save you in any form, you are now thinking that you are a pharmacist. So when you add paracetamol to food and you start cooking it, you are essentially doing, yes, what we did to get to where we are that can save your life. You are destroying that process. So you return.
You are walking back.
Oh yes. So you are degrading. You are destroying. So you see, in the process of making the paracetamol, several chemicals are intermediate. We call them intermediates. By the way, when you take that paracetamol as a drug, you know, any drug you take has to come out of your body. We call it metabolism. And there are processes. And the nature's way of getting rid of this drug is such that when you take it, the effect which we have said it should go and do, as it's doing it, the body, based on what we have done to that agent to become a drug, is taking care of it and coming out in non-toxic form. Now, there are some part of that toxic form, I'm going to explain some of that subsequently, that you don't know as a layperson. Secondly, when we make this product, we call it synthesis. For example, making paracetamol from benzene is called synthesizing paracetamol from benzene. It's a chemical process. Now, we test these processes on animals. Why do we test on animals? We want to know at what point will this agent that we want it to save life begin to destroy life? Because our object is not to destroy life, it's to save life. So that's how we get our doses. That's why you hear a doctor will tell you take 500 milligram paracetamol. The reason the doctor is telling you to take 500 paracetamol is because the pharmacist has done his laboratory research, has done tests on animals, has done tests on human beings, and is giving out information, what we call literature insert into drug. When you buy any drug, open, you will see what we call literature inside. All the information is there. These are information gathered from laboratory investigation. So that dose that you see there is what we call the therapeutic dose, where we have arrived at, okay, if you are taking this dose, you will be well. Now, in cooking, first of all, let's assume that our drug, which we have said you should swallow to be well, you have decided to start using it to cook. How many tablets are you putting it to cook? What is the dose for cooking? And it was not made for cooking. So you can see when you hear people using paracetamol to cook anything, they go and buy those tablets. If we say you are supposed to take 500 milligram, if you put 10 tablets in your cooking pot, depending on the size of, you can imagine the number of tablets they put. So you may be putting like 10 grams.
Or even a whole sachet.
Exactly. No, and the maximum each person should take in a day should not be more than 4 grams. And we hardly tell people to take that 4 grams. Okay? Now, when you put it, what you have done, you are not taking paracetamol actually. You are actually taking poison. You have poured poison into there are so many dangerous chemicals that I will explain if you give me time.
Yeah, we have other guests. We're going to pause you. We're going to pause you. I was just wondering, before we bring in Claire, before we bring in a medical doctor, Professor Ezebige is a biochemist. Okay. And I'm sure that some of this, you guys, your sciences crisscross. Professor Ernest Ezebige, we would like you to also speak to this, the use of paracetamol in cooking, the use of nails as also a tenderizer. I know that nail comes from steel. Whether there is lead inside, I wouldn't know, because lead causes madness. I understand, but maybe that's why some people are very aggressive in some of these parts. But give us a sense of what your own disposition is with regard to some of these harmful cooking habits that we have mentioned and others that you may know of.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for this opportunity to be at this show. I'm in agreement with Professor Major, the professor from NIPRID, that the sentences, the formation of paracetamol include benzene. And benzene is 6-member carbon ring. The formula is actually 6,6H6. I'm not going to bore you much with the chemistry. So benzene is a part in making paracetamol. What is paracetamol? Paracetamol can also be called acetaminophen. That is the active ingredient in paracetamol. In the US, it comes in form of Tylenol. It also comes in form of Advil. In some other country, maybe Nigeria, Panadol. So what am I saying? Paracetamol, Panadol, Advil, Tylenol, they are the same thing. They all are composed of acetaminophen, which is the active ingredient. So whatever it's called. And therapeutically, by way of dose, it is recommended that you take 1,000 milligram, that is a gram, 4 to 6 hours, not to exceed 4,000 milligram per day. Now, for medical science, for medical reason, the average weight of the average human being is 70 kg. So because paracetamol is used by adults and young adults, for example, what is recommended that is 1,000 milligram per 50 kilogram body weight. If you do the math, it comes to about 20 milligram per kilogram of body weight. That's what it is. Even if you even take the biggest person who weighs about 100 kg, the recommended dose is about 10 milligram per kilogram of body weight. So what is the point? The point is that there is specific amount that your system, that your liver, which is the clearinghouse of these xenobiotics, whenever you take something that is medicinal or something, it goes through the liver to metabolize it by biotransformation enzymes so that it's not toxic, it's not toxic to the body. Even at that, there is a threshold. The liver can easily be poisoned. Some of these things are toxic to the liver. Having even said that, paracetamol is not for everybody. It comes with a warning. For example, pregnant women. Pregnant women are encouraged to speak to their physician, to talk to their doctor before taking paracetamol. Children, they need to talk to a pediatrician before taking paracetamol. Those who have compromised liver, they are asked to talk to their physician before taking paracetamol. Those who engage in more than average of 3 drinks, alcoholic beverages, a day or a week, are also asked to talk to their physician. So it's not for everybody. By the time you start incorporating paracetamol into our food system, then you remove this restriction. It means a child can eat it. It means pregnant woman can eat it. It means those who have compromised liver can also eat it. Because you have no mechanism, you have no mode of regulating the dosage again. So that is a problem. But with the effect of heat, that is a big problem, because when you heat paracetamol, you disassemble those components that have been put together covalently by covalent bond under ideal condition, which is non-heating condition. So by the time you heat them, you free up the benzene. Benzene is a known carcinogen. It causes cancer. Not only that, then you also convert the paracetamol to, besides releasing the benzene, you also convert the remaining paracetamol into a more deadly form that can shut down your liver, that is toxic to the liver. And you know it is almost impossible for anyone to live without liver, because liver is a clearing house, is what takes care of your toxic products and the other toxic material. So the liver is very, very important. So not only this thing can release a carcinogenic part of paracetamol, it can also release benzene. We can form cancer. It can also release other form, that can also compromise your kidney. I guess the reason why people do this, you can ask. There's a why question here. Why are people incorporating paracetamol as a way of cooking? First, cost-saving mechanism and time-saving mechanism. Rather than buying firewood or using fuel to boil your cow leg or cow tail for 1 hour, you can take a shortcut. By all means, I'm not saying it's right, but we have to look at what people are doing it and discourage them, and there's a way we can provide alternative. Besides, there are enzymatic digestion. There are tenderizers that are enzymes that you can find from natural product. For example, papaya is a resource of a tenderizer. There is an enzyme in papaya that is called papain. Is a known natural tenderizer. There's also another one that is in pineapple. It is called bromelain. all those things in Nigeria, we can put all those things together and formulate a natural ingredient-based tenderizer.
All right, Professor Ernest, thank you. You've all raised quite frightening issues surrounding paracetamol, considering the fact that it's considered, Kingsley, as one of the least dangerous painkillers, to consume. But now we know that it's not so, and that's why I like to bring in Dr. Abuja. We know doctors, health, experts, advise that whatever we're eating, whatever we're doing or cooking, we must bring it to a particular boiling point. So at that point, all foreign bodies get to be destroyed. How does this apply to, adding paracetamol in our cooking?
Well, let me start by correcting something. It is not everything that you need to cook. Our dietitian just alluded us to a fact that if you cook certain things, you destroy the value that they are supposed to add to the body. So let me correct that from the beginning. Yes, one of the reasons why certain food products must be cooked to a certain temperature before they are consumed is to kill the bacteria, excess bacteria in some cases, that could be harmful to the body. It does not mean that you have to destroy the chemicals, especially the useful chemicals inside those food stuff. Because when you do, like the previous speakers have spoken, what is supposed to be beneficial becomes destructive. Okay, now let me talk about paracetamol, and then I'll come to the nail issue. First of all, the way in which we consume paracetamol in particular and painkillers in general in Nigeria is rather excessive and totally unnecessary. If somebody like you, who is in the media, who sleeps very little sometimes, who is under stress, come back from the office and you have headache, you don't have to go and take paracetamol because you have headache. That headache may be just stress and pressure that you were in the office. What do? You go and take a warm bath, relax. If the headache persists, go to a quiet place, quiet room, dark room, switch off all the light. If you want an air conditioner or a fan, put it on, lie down quietly and sleep off. In 30 minutes to 1 hour, when you wake up, your headache is gone. Because that headache may not necessarily have been caused by any disease. It's just pressure or stress. And that's how to treat it. But here, any little thing, give me paracetamol. And like Prof said from Benin, a pregnant woman is not supposed to be taking paracetamol. And just because she has headache, she does not know, in some cases, or does not mind, in some other cases, about the fact that she's carrying a baby whose organs are just developing. And the exposure of such fetal to these chemicals is detrimental. Okay, now, that's about the way we treat paracetamol. We should not be taking in paracetamol just because we have pain or we have headache. When you do those small things at home, resting, going to a quiet place, sleeping, taking warm bath, and the headache does not go, or the pain that you feel does not go, it tells you that there may be some underlying cause. Then what do? You seek medical help. When you become the nurse, the doctor, the pharmacist, at once, you destroy yourself. Because you are none of the above. And you know very little. From the previous discussions, we were informed that you can only take about 500 milligrams of paracetamol at a time. And 3 times a day maximum. Now, you have a case where people are just popping it in. I took it in about 2 hours ago. My headache is still on. And you took another one.
When you boil paracetamol in cooking, the compounds that get broken down, do they remain insoluble?
Very good. Not necessarily. Benzene, for example, does not dissolve easily. In fact, it doesn't dissolve with water. You can put benzene side by side and filter it and find that some of it is in the water and some of it is almost by itself. It's almost like a drop of oil. And it's very poisonous. Okay, now let me come to what it does to the body. I'm not talking of only paracetamol, I'm talking of all painkillers. They are metabolized in the liver and filtered through the kidney. In the liver, because you are taking excessive number or quantity of the painkiller, in this case paracetamol, you are giving the liver excess work to do. And when the liver is unable to carry out that assignment that you are giving, what does it do? It collapses. And the liver must not collapse. The liver must filter. It is a must, no option. It must filter the blood. And what is the blood carrying? It's carrying all the food that we eat. Good or bad. Useful or non-useful. They all have to pass through the liver. But more importantly, the previous speakers alluded to this, the liver is the organ that metabolizes or breaks the drugs that we take down so that the useful parts can go to where they are needed and do the job that they are supposed to do. Now, when you destroy the liver or you reduce the capacity or the ability of the liver, you are saying whatever you've done is nonsense, because it's like I give you food because you complain you are hungry. But your mouth is sealed. You cannot eat. So, of what use is the food that I give to you? No use to you. Or you have something in your throat. You cannot swallow anything. But you complain that you are hungry. So I'm a generous man. I give you food. Take and eat. You chew it, but you cannot swallow it. Has that food been useful to you? No. Your hunger persists. But in this case, it is not even only that. I'm glad that Prof mentioned it. A lot of people in our society drink alcohol. Alcohol is not a good friend of paracetamol. It's like having two mad people, one a female, the other a male, attacking you. No, just close your eyes and imagine. You have a crazy woman and a crazy man by your sides attacking you. So which way do you go? And how do you escape? Is it the screaming of the crazy woman or the slap of the man? Either way you go, you are going to be hurt. So now, when you take alcohol and you are taking paracetamol together, and now there are many other drugs that people are taking. Many people have high blood pressure. Those drugs must never be taken with things that are stimulants, caffeine, and so on. You take tea in the morning, you take coffee in the morning or in the afternoon, whatever time, you take alcohol, you take paracetamol. Now you close your eyes at in the villages, people are taking native medicine. They are boiling leaves and herbs. And then they are drinking. Now you close your eyes for 1 minute and imagine what work you are giving the liver to do. Which one is he doing and which one is he going to leave? At the end of the day, the person comes sick. Now we have more cases of liver failure now, more cases of renal failure, kidney failure now than we used to have. In this studio some months ago, somebody asked me, Doctor, why is it that now everybody is having kidney problem? These are some of the reasons why we're having the problems. And like the dietitian earlier said, some of it is due to ignorance, and the other part of it is due to wickedness, what I would call wickedness or lack of love for others. It is sad, very sad, that in a society like Nigeria, where we are supposedly very religious, whether as Muslims or Christians, we do not think of the other person, the neighbor. We think of we how we can make money, how we can benefit.
You know, just along that, Kingsley.
Yeah.
I keep wondering, how is it that people get to discover, these things?
Well, that's a pertinent issue. Doctor, you were going to talk about the use of nail, to tenderize, but we're going to have to pause you. Keep that in the meantime, because I want to ask another question with regard to some of our habits. Mrs. Abagai, you prefaced your comment by talking about, say, look, what we eat, what we put in our mouth affects us. But that it is not just what we put in our mouth. We have to worry about the purchase, storage, preparation, cooking before the thing comes into our mouth. As part of this, I want to draw attention to some of the things that we may also know about, so that the guests can also speak to this. Nail to tenderize is one. There is also the use of kerosene and tires to roast meat. Now, you also hear this, that when you go to the market and you see a goat or a cow and there are no flies on it, don't buy. You see some of the goats, the tongue will be sticking out like this, that they use for something like that. They say when you don't see flies on it, don't buy, because they will tell you that they have used formaldehyde.
Yes.
That they normally use to preserve cadavers, that is to say dead bodies. So when you take that one, you don't touch it.
Of potash.
That one you count. That's what we call it count to tenderize beans. So how do we respond? What are the hazards that we face? This one that they use, they say they also inject something into momo. I don't know what it is, but tell us.
I would like to talk about the meat aspect, in the sense that if there is proper enlightenment, people should realize that meat is not something you cook in a hurry. Because if you want to cook meat in a hurry without adding any tenderizer, without doing any of these, things that are really very hazardous, you would have to use high temperature. And the moment you do that, that meat becomes dangerous for consumption. Why? Because when you raise the temperature while cooking meat, the meat, creates certain hydrocarbons, very dangerous, that are carcinogenic.
Hey, carcinogenic again?
Yes. You have the heterocyclic amines. You have the polycyclic, aromatic hydrocarbons. All these are, chemicals that are generated if you are cooking meat at high temperature, because you are in a hurry. Whether you are boiling it or you are roasting it. Because the dripping of the liquid from the meat, the juice from the meat, along with the fat, combine together with the flame, they rise in the smoke, these hydrocarbons, and infuse into the tissues of this meat. Oh, yes. Then, the right way to try to cook meat is, after the meat boils a bit, then you lower the heat and simmer it gently. That way you reduce the level of carcinogens in that meat. It becomes a lot safer to consume. Now, when we talk about, other things, so you can imagine if somebody is using tire, to burn the hides of the goat, they are releasing chemicals from the tires. They go in with the smoke and the juice that is coming out of that body, because at least you cut this thing somewhere. There was blood, and then juice will ooze out from the neck, and then, this smoke is going right into the system. And you have poison getting into this meat. Those are realities. And when you look at the pomo itself, we already are talking about the issues of, you know, the injections, the steroids and everything that, you know, goes into the cow, for example. And even though the pharmacists will say that it's only superficial what we get, Abby, it doesn't go into, you know, the tissues of the meat, but it stays in the skin. So you have chemicals already. And to have this pomo now being injected with a chemical, it becomes extra dangerous to eat.
Speak, in addition to that,
yes.
speak to the issue of potash, because we are all guilty. If you want to, you know, tenderize your beans or your pomo, you add a little of potash, and then you want to also cook your beans pudding, momoy. You know, you use either cellophane or nylon, you know, to wrap and all that.
So these are the various
You
ways.
see them at bus stops here in Abuja. Something very yellow like this, you know, mustard color.
Yes.
Everything is in cellophane. Those people that are coming out from buses, they're just picking.
They're picking
several.
and
That is
chewing
not
and going.
I don't know whether it's momoy or something.
That's not momoy. That's ukpa.
Oh, that's
I
ukpa.
don't
It's
know
just
what
the
called.
same pudding.
Process. Okay.
It's pudding. It's the same pudding. You know, this one is bambara nut pudding. The other moi is bean pudding. So, you know, we've been hearing stories about polythene and all the chemicals that are carcinogenic. And that is why we have come to the point of saying, you know, initially it was aluminium, you know, containers. We said, look, there is this issue of aluminium dissolving slightly into your moi. And when you have aluminium poisoning, it becomes a serious thing because it gets straight to your brain and you have issues there. So we now found people using polythene, and eventually the story started coming out. Look, stop this. No, but you know, the problem we are having is proper, you know, sensitization. Our sensitization mechanism is very weak.
So what is
in
best?
this country?
What is best?
Use your leaves. Use your leaves, the natural leaves.
That one that they pluck.
Yes. The broad leaves.
Yeah.
You know, you use them to wrap your moi and even the okpa and cook. That's the safest way to do it. After all, that's the way they do agidi.
Yes. That's somehow
Traditionally.
it's becoming a delicacy now at
I was going to talk to you
parties,
also
you know,
about the potash. Potash, which is actually known as natron is it? But people choose to call it potash. We don't know why it is potash. You know, it carries a higher sodium content than cooking salt. And so for people with hypertension, for people who are at risk of hypertension, you know, it is not an ideal thing to use to cook. It might do what you want, but at the end of the day, you know, it raises, you know, your risk for hypertension. It complicates your, you know, hypertensive condition if you are already one. So the truth of the matter is that we still advocate slow cooking for things like that. Cook your beans. Be patient enough to cook beans. And if you think that your beans will take long to cook, you could soak your beans overnight. Who says that you must cook today and finish today? There are certain things you begin planning to cook, you know, the previous day. You understand? You could wash your beans, you know, pick all the dirt, remove the stones, soak it, leave it in the refrigerator overnight. By the time you place it on the fire, it won't take that long to cook.
You know,
so all we need is.
But when you soak beans, you know, that skin comes off. That, you know, usually when they want to prepare moi, that's the way they do it. They will soak it first, and then the skin will begin to go. But you know, when you have that skin and you want to eat it, that's what it is.
When it absorbs water, the skin stays. Oh yes.
Okay.
It is just when you wash it and you want to pour it in the mortar and start cooking, thrashing, that you find it, you know, standing like that. But if it remains in water a little while longer, you know, it absorbs the water.
Yes.
And it stays.
Okay, Mrs. Abagai, Thanks. Back again to pharmacist Martin Semeje. You know, we had to truncate your flight when you were on paracetamol, but there are other things that have also come up now. The use of tires, you know, to roast meat, the use of kerosene, formaldehyde. And this one, they say that if you go to the market and you don't see flies on the meat that you want to buy, but flies are all kinds, they carry all kinds of pathogens, you know, carry all kinds of germs and bacteria. But now they say if you don't see flies, then don't buy. But if you if you see flies, buy it. The ones that where you don't have flies have been preserved, you know, with all kinds of of chemicals. What do we do? Plus, I'm sure you must have also heard this. They're also using detergents, cleaning agents, to boost fermentation of cassava to prepare akpu.
Okay, thank you. You know, we are many, so we'll just try to cut and cut and cut. But let me say this, so that we are not seen as a group that are alarmists. Every food or drug that we take, we have limits of acceptability. So in pharmacy, we say all drugs are poisons. So it's a matter of dose. The dose that will prevent you from dying is different from the dose that will kill you. So it's important for us to know. You see? You say kill them. You see, that's our religious nature that we also talk about. Now, before modern science, our ancestors, who were not scientists, they had a way of knowing what is poisonous and what is not poisonous. And the truth is, flies is one of the indicators. Because, because if things like that will not feed on something, then our ancestors say, why are they not feeding on it? There must be something wrong with it. If you go into the history of science, that's how we evolved. That's how we evolved. So there is some sense in those indicators of our people who don't know, and that is taking the area of ignorance, who don't know, but use some natural means of knowing what is poisonous and what is non-poisonous. It's like from my village, Agaliga, where I come from, a woman will fry akara and fry better than a graduate who is using YouTube to fry. While the woman in my village does not have thermometer, but he can look at the oil, take some onions, put on it, you say, no, this oil is not ready to fry akara yet. After 5 to 10 minutes, you try it again and say, it is good now. And try it, you will see that there's difference in the frying. Okay, that's our natural science. Things have improved now. And that's why we say, before any of those things are done, since we now are privileged to know what to do, professionals should be consulted. All the things you have mentioned, whether tire or cellophane or all of these that are used in roasting, were they made for roasting? It's the same like paracetamol. You are using paracetamol to cook food. Is that the reason why paracetamol was made by the pharmacist? If you are in your car, why was a car made? Was a car made to fly? Can you sit inside your car and make it to start flying like the aeroplane? So why are you using something that is made for a purpose in another way? It is called abuse. That is why I said earlier that drug abuse. You see, many of us who criminalize or who are quick to condemn those that are abusing the ones we know, codeine, tramadol, and all of that. We also do a lot of drug abuse and misuse, even right in our homes, and food abuse and misuse, and food additive abuse and misuse. And all of those things generate chemicals that are poisonous, because at that point the chemicals that have been generated were not originally what is meant for you to consume. There are so many functional countries now where they don't even use cellophane. They use biodegradable, they use paper. You know, paper is made into bags. Because if you throw paper out, because it's cellulose, it's biodegradable, it goes into the environment, does not. You see, so when we talk about climate change and all these environmental hazards that we have, so many of these things we do also contribute to those environmental hazards. But let me not leave this place this morning without saying something to make everybody know that he said that you start cooking your food in your house and eat, or as a nation, we have a deliberate mechanism or package to begin to address the issue of use of drugs in cooking. Anybody who consumes food that paracetamol has been used to cook, let me inform that person that you are a smoker. Oh yes, because there is a chemical called 1,4-benzoquinone. That chemical is also in cigarette smoking. Let me make it more, let me drive it home and make it more alarming so that we know what we are doing. You see, carbon monoxide. When I'm sure many people know of carbon monoxide because when thank you very much, generators and gases and all of that you can easily die. You know why it kills? Because carbon monoxide, it has higher affinity for blood, hemoglobin, blood, than oxygen. The moment there is carbon monoxide in this room now, it displaces, in science we call it shifting the curve to the left. It displaces oxygen. So we get carbon monoxide. When you get carbon monoxide, because oxygen is no longer in you, which is what is necessary for you to survive, you now suffer hypoxia. So cardiovascular problem begins immediately, and that's why you can die.
Just say heart problem.
Okay, heart problem and dying. Now, I have said this so that I link it with the 414 with the benzoquinone that I mentioned earlier,
which is in the paracetamol,
which is in the breakdown process, and its own affinity is even higher than carbon monoxide to the hemoglobin, and it forms a very harmful compound, and that compound can cause immediate liver failure.
Sorry, please, before you go forward, is there any way we can identify the meat or food that, you know, has been prepared with paracetamol?
No.
Please.
You cannot look at meat and say that, okay, this meat, they use paracetamol to prepare it. That is why, you see, nobody should think he or she is safe.
Yeah. Because we cannot all be cooking at home. Some of us live as early as 3 a.m.
Yes.
You know, so
I agree with you, and that is why I gave the alternative that is, as much as possible, cook at home. I cooked yesterday evening. Now, and if you cannot cook at home, what is the other thing that we should do? I believe that that's what NTA is doing right now. But this alone will not solve it, because you cannot be doing this all of the time, because this is not the only program you have. So there need to be, you know, it takes us to a lot of things.
So we can't,
Nigeria
there
as
are
a nation,
no signs. You can't tell a food that has been paracetamolised.
Science will be able to do that. Science will be able to do that. It's called research.
There is.
It's called research.
Dr. Boja says there is.
See.
Hold on a second. Yes. Let's see. You know, once they have, and I'm sure that those who cook will have ascertained from the comments by our experts in the studios that do not use paracetamol in your cooking whatsoever. But assuming it is there, they use it to tenderize momo, to tenderize cow leg. And the time they realize when they are cooking it, by the time the stew now comes, how will you be able to sort it out? You know, the stew that some of them even, we're not discussing oils today, but we discussed oil in the past. They will just put oil, and that's what they will be as much as Jabi Lake.
So tantalizing.
Well, let me say something. Prof is right when he said you cannot just look at food and determine immediately that something has been used in cooking it. That's absolutely correct. That was one of the reasons why we used to have those sanitary inspectors, health, environmental officers. Now we don't have them anymore. What was their role? Their role was to go to, especially markets, And in the market, two places where they are focused. One, where they have kitchens or restaurants in the market. They go there to check the back of the kitchen. What are they cooking there? Is it dead meat? Because sometimes you find a dead goat in the village. And somebody says, my goat is missing. And they found the dead body. Take it to the market. It's not good for you to eat in the house, but take it to the market as if it's animals that will eat it in the market. Somebody buys it and quietly, quickly takes it to the back of the kitchen.
And dresses it.
And slaughters it. What do those people find out those days? They find that the meat is not red as normal meat, that it is dark instead. Point number one. Point number two, the meat that is already dead, especially if it is poisoned with chemical, the flesh comes off very easily. If you touch it, it just disappears. It just scatters. That tells you that something has already done the job of cooking. And therefore, when you eat it, you are eating poison. Water. If they find that the water you are using to cook does not look normal, and they try to smell it, maybe they are able to smell or not able to smell anything. What do? They test the water. They have their kits with them. They test it. Now we don't have them anymore.
And those are not persons employed by the federal government. These are persons employed by local authorities or state authorities or regional authorities.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be federal government. I listened to you about an hour ago when you were talking of everybody saying, federal government has not helped us with this. Government has not helped us with this. Who is government in the first place? Are you not government? And why are we calling only the federal government to do everything? Even states. I heard you saying that states are waiting for the federal government to empower them to get ready for the new epidemic that is called Lassa fever and others. Why should it be federal government? And by the way, health is in the alternative list, meaning as a state you can take your own action.
Dr. Abuja, sorry, let's just keep you on hold. The producer has been telling us to go on break. Yes, so please, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back and continue with our discussion. You're watching Good Morning and
Culture.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're right on time. We are stretching down home. But our topic for today is harmful cooking habits that we're engaged in. And this is the prompt for our conversation is the use of paracetamol to tenderize our food. Dr. Isaac Abuja, you were giving us an explanation of how we can probably identify, paracetamol tenderized.
No, not paracetamol per se. We used to have health inspectors trained for about 2 to 3 years and are dispatched usually in the villages once or twice a week to local markets to inspect food in particular.
Okay.
Even drinks too, the brukutu that is used in the villages, they used to inspect them. Where are they now? We're not using them. I'm not saying that in all cases you look at food and you can tell immediately that they use paracetamol. No. But there are certain things that will give you a clue. Take a woman who is selling fish, for example. Fish attracts a lot of flies. And you notice that somebody is selling fish here, somebody is selling fish there and there, both fresh and dry. And you don't see any flies. That tells you that something is wrong somewhere. And you should not eat it. Because if there is no fly, it means that sometimes they have used chemicals that will repel flies. That chemical that is repelling flies is also repelling human beings. Okay. We are only pretending not to see or not to smell, and we are eating. But let me mention something. Do you know now that even red pepper, this pepperish pepper, the real native one, that you take just a little quantity to spice your food. If you go now to the market here in Abuja, not in the villages, and you buy a cup, and you go home, you put it in water, put a big bowl of water, and put that pepper in it, and you see how many layers you have. Most or 50% or more, sometimes of it, is just zobo flour that somebody grinded and mixed with the pepper because the colors are similar to swell it up so that they can make more money.
That's why I don't buy those
Nails?
ones. I buy
Nails?
Very quickly
Okay.
before we go to
When you use nails to cook, it decomposes the nail. What is in the nail? There are chemicals. Two are major, iron and lead.
Oh, there's lead in it.
Yes.
I was right. Which causes madness.
And then, because it affects the brain.
Yes.
Now, nails are used in the environment, so they absorb. It's a compound. It's not an element. A nail is a compound. So when you use it to cook, you are decomposing it and freeing the radicals in it. And they go to the body and do all kinds of harms. Okay, take the iron that is a lead element inside nail. What does it do? It will go to the liver first for metabolism. The liver is not able to break down iron in that form. If it is in a micro form, because blood essentially is iron. That was one of the reasons why Prof said earlier, that the affinity that it has for blood is higher than that of oxygen. It is not really the blood that you see that is the issue. What is in the blood, which is iron, the iron molecules, is what it goes for to bind. It's the same thing with cyanide. Cyanide is faster at binding with molecules of iodine. And therefore, if you don't use something to take its place, it will come and sit down. So when the real good thing comes to sit, it says, no, I'm already here. You cannot sit down. So what they do now, they use palm oil, for example. That is why those who eat cassava leaf, if you use palm oil to cook cassava leaf, palm oil will displace the position of cyanide. The molecules in palm oil will replace that of cyanide. So you can eat it now, it will not do any harm to you. But if you don't use palm oil and you cook cassava leaf, cyanide will bind very comfortably. And when you eat it, what will happen? You will die.
Dr. Abuja.
Now,
Dr. Abuja.
Yes.
We'll pause you. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to discuss this and then see at some point, because Good Morning Nigeria always takes on public interest health issues. It's most challenging for us to try to exhaust all of this, but it is clear that we are all, as Professor Emeje said, we are all at risk. Part of the instigation for this has to do with using paracetamol as a tenderizer. Professor Ezebige, earlier you were already ticking off some naturally available tenderizers. We're on the home stretch. Could you give us a sense of that, and maybe one or two other comments that you would like to make very quickly?
Again, thank you. I like to make contribution what has been said previously, my understanding. For example, we are given the impression that when you're cooking, you can exceed certain temperature. We heard about benzene pyrene. My understanding that applies to when you are cooking things in open flame. When you expose what you are cooking to charcoal, in presence of fat and other things. When you are just cooking in a pot or when you are boiling something, I'm not sure how that applies. Another thing is the decomposition of the nail that we have talked about. I don't understand that, because you have decomposition of organic things. Like when somebody dies, the body decomposes. So I don't think that nail will decompose, because certainly is inorganic. So I don't understand that. Rather, I think nail, maybe there's a lynchy process where some of the trace elements can act as a catalyst to speed up certain chemical reaction. That might be a mechanism how nail can activate a catalyst that can speed up the breaking down of the fiber, of the collagen, the architecture of this is sort of mid biology, what the integrity of the muscle fiber that puts the whole thing together. I think that is a mechanism. The issue of flies is very, very scary for me to start using flies as an indicator. From childhood, my understanding is that flies are associated with decomposition, things that are nasty, things that are bad. To start using this as an indicator, I'm not really sure about that. The issue of formaldehyde is another thing, as the speaker actually said, that you use formaldehyde for the preservation of cadaver. By the time you start putting it in meat, you are trying to preserve a living person. Somebody can imagine the consequence that can come from that. Tire roasting is bad because in designing tire, we have some of these benzene that we also have spoken about and other deadly chemicals. But by the time you use tire to roast your meat can be exposed to some of these deadly chemicals that we have talked about. Miss Clara asked a very, very intelligent question. I know she's an intelligent person. That is, what is the way forward? How are we able to make a diagnostic of the meat that has been treated with paracetamol versus not? Well, I think we have the capability. Certainly, myself and some other team from my university, I've been in the outside university, we can come up with something like this. We all agree that there's degradation of this paracetamol, that benzene is one of the byproducts of the degradation of paracetamol. Why don't we use that as a marker, as a chemical marker? We can use, simple, equipment in the lab that can detect the presence of benzene and other residue from the breakdown of paracetamol. That can serve as a fingerprint. That can serve as a diagnostic for doing some of these things. So this is the role of the university. We don't need a lot of things. We don't need to buy kit from the university. We can use mass, spectroscopy to do some of these things. LCMS, we can do some of these things. And finally, for me, last year I also heard issue of using fake tomato paste, where people use maybe other things and they use dye. They use red dye to stain maybe cornstarch or other substances to make it look like tomato paste. We can also develop a fingerprint for that, because the natural tomato has a lycopene. It's a lycopene that's a pigment that gives the reddish characteristics to tomato. So if anyone fakes it, you can detect the presence of other chemical and use that as a diagnostic. Certainly, the university, we need to be more relevant. We need to do more research. Not starting from scratch. We already have some information that can be used to develop a diagnostic tool as a marker to do some of these things. Certainly, if I have ideas on how we can do this thing, that within 3 or 6 months, we can come up with a diagnostic to be able to distinguish food that has been prepared with paracetamol versus those that have not been.
All right.
I'm just wondering, Professor Ernest Izewigie, thanks a lot for your comments there. As we said, we're getting pressed for time, but in your prognosis and a prescription of a testing mechanism for ascertaining whether paracetamol is in a meal or otherwise, that would be useful. But when we look at what we're talking about, the mama put or buckateria, I'm not sure you're going to have a testing kit in each of these buckateria to utilize that. So tenderizers, very briefly, Mrs. Sarah Bagai, and then the other guests will give you less than Mr. Bagai, very quickly, natural tenderizers that we have, very briefly.
Tenderizers, yes. But okay, I would still want to, emphasize that there are two different, hydrocarbons that are generated, whether from roasting, as I earlier said, open fire. That is the polycyclic, aromatic hydrocarbons. And then when you are cooking meat in water on high temperature, you get heterocyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They are both carcinogenic. That is the reality. I'm talking as a dietitian. Now, secondly,
he wants to know what are the natural tenderizers.
Tenderizers, yes.
Instead of using meal and paracetamol.
Exactly as he earlier on said. People used to use papain, the juice, extract from pawpaw leaves. When you break a pawpaw leaf, you see white, juice. Papain is extracted from that. And that is what can be used, for cooking. And then for tenderizing your meat. And then bromelain is from pineapple. You could actually decide to use the middle stalk, that stalk in the pineapple.
Inside the pineapple fruit itself?
Yes. You can actually cut that and use it. But these things are done at industrial level, and they are made or compounded into powders. Powdered form that you could buy from the market and use.
Thank you. Let me summarize. You're already taking my time. Now let me summarize. See, the way forward.
Yes.
From public health perspective is to find a way of utilizing research results already in the academia. You see, all of the diagnostic or method of testing, centuries, you know how to test for presence of paracetamol anywhere. So it's no longer, we don't require research again. If you go to our universities, I represent the academic pharmacy sector. If you go to our faculties of pharmaceutical sciences and probably science, you will see theses that our academics have already produced that have this solution.
Okay.
Therefore, what should we do? Get all of these synthesized, and then we can now begin to apply in public sector, where we can solve the problem.
Dr. Abuja.
Two things.
You are killing our time.
Yes.
Short time measure.
One, let's go back to use sanitary inspectors. Train and use them. Two, let's use our conscience as the policeman, the best policeman. This thing that I'm putting out for sale, would I take it myself?
Dr.
This thing that I'm doing, is it good for my neighbor?
Public health. Sorry, we have less than a minute to 9 o'clock, so we have to go. Dr. Isaac Kuma Abuja, public health consultant, thank you very much. Mrs. Sarah Abagai, of course, fellow Institute of Dietetics.
Yes.
Many thanks to you. And Professor Martin Semeje.
Yes.
We thank you. We've already signed off Professor Ernest from Benin. Okay, Professor Ernest, many thanks to you. We thank you very much for joining us on the program. And that's how it's been for today, I want to believe.
Yeah, we have a number of tweets that came in. Okay. They all, were expressing surprise and indeed alarm as to what has been discussed by our guests. We all just have to be careful. If you have access to those who prepare food for the public, enlighten them as much as you can. Don't use kerosene or tire to roast your meat. In particular, don't use paracetamol to tenderize. Don't use nails to tenderize, plus several other aspects so that we all can enjoy our meals and then live long. It's on that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in today.